Welcome to Osteo, that's with a capital TEA, where OsteoWarriors in treatment and recent survivors spill the tea on all things osteosarcoma and cancer from the adolescent, young adult patient perspective. Listen in on our honest and personal conversations about our osteo experiences, stories, and who knows what else we tend to get sidetracked. This podcast discusses all aspects of the young adult cancer experience in a conversational format. Audience discretion is advised. Like and follow MIB Agents on social media for all the hot goss and intel.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to an amazing episode of Osteo. We are going to be talking with some survivors of osteosarcoma to kind of show what the other side is like. I know that there are so many stories, like Camille and I's where we are still kind of in the battle, as they would say, if you use battle terminology. So it'll be really refreshing kind of to hear, their perspectives. And I don't know about you all, but it definitely gives Camille and I hope that there can be a positive end to our journeys. So yeah, we're really excited. And another thing we're really excited for at the end of this month is Giving Tuesday. Don't save the date. It is November 28th, 2023. It is the number one day to give money to MIB. Please consider supporting us, the MIB Agents Osteosarcoma Alliance. You can donate at mibagents.org. There's lots of buttons that say donate. You can't miss it. With the collective contributions in science, patient support, donations, and time, we know our osteosarcoma community understands how to be the change you wish to see in the world. This month, please continue to use your powers for good and be the I in MIB to make it better, because we can't make it better without you. So please consider donating. And Camille, what's the tea? Literally.
The tea today is, what is it? It's my blueberry lavender tea that I've shared before, but in my new mug that I've painted with my friends. The lighting is so awful.
Wait, it looks so good though. I thought that was professional.
I am a professional, so technically it is professional, but it's a little cold now, but actually it's freezing. I don't know how that's possible, but I'd give it like a 5 out of 10 because it's not very hot. But
so it's not like a refresher moment?
It's not no.
Okay, I got it. It is colder where you are than it is here. It's about 80 degrees here today. So.
True. It's been getting down in the temps over here.
Hot here. I'm jealous. I like the cold. I am drinking some coffee that my mom usually gets from our Keurig. It's like Brazilian medium roast. I don't know. And then I put this chocolate metabolism powder in it. It's not one of those like fake out like diet supplements that like influencers sell. Like it's like a legitimate it's supposed to help curb cravings, but it's also really good for you. It's got vitamins in it. And it tastes like chocolate, but it doesn't have sweetener. So it's like that rich chocolate, So it tastes really good in coffee, brings out the flavor of the coffee and the chocolate. So yummy together. And I added a little special flavoring to it as well. That is definitely helping with my mood. And it smells like Christmas. So that's really nice. And so I'm going to give it a solid 10 out of 10, even though it's kind of lukewarm now. But it's giving me that nice little boost of energy and holiday spirit.
Nice. All right. Well, I guess without further ado, here we go on to the interview.
Woohoo!
Woo! So welcome, Maeve, to Osteo. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you. This is an episode that we've been wanting to do for a while. So I know that Camille and I are really excited, and it's going to be a great time.
So I guess...
thanks for asking me.
Of course. So I guess without further ado, we can jump into questions. So can you share the story of your diagnosis and treatment?
Yeah, for sure. I was originally diagnosed in May of 2011, which it's crazy that it's been that long at that point, because I feel like a lot of times it feels like it was yesterday. And then when I think about how much time it has been, it is insane. But It was the spring of my 6th grade year. I started having pain in my leg, like my proximal right tibia area. I was really active. I loved basketball, but it was like soccer season. I was playing volleyball, and I just started having pain, but I didn't like injure myself in basketball or anything. Like I just, for no real reason, it seemed like my leg was hurting. And then my mom was just kind of like, go outside and play, like, yes, you're fine. Which like is a normal reaction because I was like active and whatnot. But for whatever reason, my dad was like, let's just go to the pediatrician. And I had just started at this new pediatrician practice a couple of months beforehand. And I think like my diagnosis is unique from other people that I've talked to because I was diagnosed really quickly from when I started having symptoms. And unfortunately, I think that was kind of born from the fact that another patient in my pediatrician's practice was actively undergoing treatment for osteosarcoma. So I think it was like more top of mind than it typically is for like a standard pediatrician. So I went like right away to get an x-ray. And I'm from Long Island. So within a week I was at Memorial Sloan Kettering in Manhattan having a biopsy. So that's kind of leading up to it. And I think I also like found out that I had cancer in a unique way, which looking back, I honestly think was for the best. And it's kind of funny, which is not, I feel like, what people usually say. But I knew like I was having a biopsy, but I was 11. Like I didn't know what any words meant. I like had heard them talking about it too, where I heard them say osteosarcoma, but I wasn't really thinking about what any of that actually meant. And no one in my family had had cancer before, so I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And I had my biopsy, and then I was still like post-op. And it's like the first thing I remember from waking up, but I don't know how much time had actually passed. My recovery nurse came in and she told me that her cat had cancer, but it was doing great after chemotherapy. And I was just like, I remember like turning to my mom and I was like, do I have cancer? And she was like, a little bit.
A little bit. Oh God.
Just a smidge. Just a smidgen.
A little. So I mean, no pun intended, the cat was kind of out of the bag at that point. And I mean, it was like probably better because like, I don't know who told you guys, but I feel like no one really wants to be that person. So the job was just kind of like taken away from everyone else. So
you're like, yeah, cat's out of the bag, I guess. Like, yeah, I have cancer. It's crazy that you were also right proximal tibia because I was also right proximal tibia.
Okay, yeah.
And we were both chi omegas, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I was not sure if there were past conversations we talked about that. So I was like, okay, right proximal tibia little group. Yeah.
Sisters.
We're a double sisters.
I'm also a right tibia osteo girly. I don't know if it's proximal, but
like
tibia,
closer to your knee, I guess, is proximal. But yeah,
I guess it was middle, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar. So we're all in the same boat.
Tibia gang, forever.
And then I guess for my treatment started like shortly thereafter with MAP chemotherapy, I think like similar to everyone else. And Sloan is a pediatric day hospital. So we drove like back and forth from Long Island to the city every day. My dad like happened to work in the city. So rather than like commuting on the train, which he had always done, he would just drive in the morning and drop me and my mom off. And then after work, come back to Sloan, pick us up, drive back, which definitely was a lot. But that's also all I knew. Like they didn't. I was never inpatient unless I was having surgery or I like never really occasionally got intrapenic fevers, but like those were really the only instances when they would do hospitalization. So I definitely liked like being able to go home and sleep in my own bed, but it was definitely hard. Like it was just a lot of time in the car, and especially after surgeries, it was just like definitely painful to be driving. But my mom would kind of just like sit in the back and like hold my leg and we made the best of it. But my limb salvage surgery originally, I had a fibular graft from my left leg, which like seemed great in theory and like is great for some people, but never really worked for me. I even after then treatment was just kind of like in and out of the OR for 2 years trying to promote healing, but I never had union. So that was definitely tough. But then ultimately on May 6, 2014, which was like 3 years from my original diagnosis, figured out that I had a local relapse. So at that time, fortunately still had not metastasized. But local relapses, I think, are kind of complex. Like they traditionally are a very poor prognosis. So was really kind of unknown, but decided to do an above-knee amputation, and then was treated with ifosfamide and etoposide. And chemo the second time around was much, much, much harder on my body. Altogether, I think I just had like much more awful side effects, and then ultimately ended up stopping treatment early, or than plans, just because it was like, I think the chemo is going to kill me before anything else. Yeah. So I don't really know why, but for whatever reason, knock on wood, I'm still NED. And it's been 9 years now. So, I mean, I feel like that's osteosarcoma. Like, it just doesn't really make any sense. But that's my story. Sorry.
And no mets to the lungs?
No, I've never had lung mets.
That's, I mean, just hearing your story, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing this because we all hear this all the time, but it is inspiring and it does give us hope, because obviously Camille and I, we still have it. You know, I'm just over 5 years in, still have it. Haven't been NED. I know Camille has relapsed as many times as she has fingers, essentially. So it's just I know that sharing your story with the audience was so crucial, just because it's like so many of us feel like we've been in it, like in the game. Not that it's a game, but we've been in for so long. We're exhausted.
Yeah,
it's just so refreshing to hear a success story rather than the blah 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 is remembered for on their birthday, which are touching posts and they should be out there. Everyone should be remembered, but we want to hear the good news too.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. It's nice that you guys are, offering that perspective, even in the middle of everything. So I appreciate it.
Yes. So what would you tell your younger self? What would you tell like a newly diagnosed osteo patient? Like, if you were kind of, would you let the cat out of the bag like that nurse did, or what would you gotta go with?
I know. That's a question that I definitely struggle with. And I don't know why. Like, I just don't have a really great answer. But I think like everyone's just so different. I do feel like, for me at least, like, I think that I definitely wanted to have all of the information, even when I was young. Like, I really wanted to be an active member of my care team and involved in making decisions. So I think that, like, that's important, even when you're working with young kids and their parents, like, to include them in conversation. And I feel like rather than it overwhelming me, it really helped me to understand, like, why we need to do this, even though it made me feel so awful. So I think that was important for me. I also feel like I just would tell myself, like, it's okay to not be okay. Like, I really, really struggled. I think much more so, which I'm sure you can relate to, with my relapse as opposed to my original diagnosis. Like, when I was first diagnosed, I was, of course, scared just because I didn't know what it meant, but I felt confident that I was going to be okay. And I definitely didn't feel that way when I relapsed. And then on top of that, I think, like, I knew how bad it was going to be. There was no, like, ignorance and, like, oh, like, this will be fine. So I think just, I would be like, it's okay. Like, this sucks. And that's, like, okay to acknowledge. And like, you're going to have big feelings, and it's going to take a really long time to process them. I'm still working on it.
I think that's a great answer. You know, it's Camille and I had our coping to music episode last month, which was one that we really were excited about too. And one of the songs that I made sure was on our list was "It's Never Really Over" by Katy Perry, because if you're in remission, even if you're through it, you know, it's so hard, you know, because you do still relive that, and you're still, you know, in it, but you're out of it, and there's always the fear of relapse. And so I feel like, you know, just, I guess our next question would be like, where are you now? Like, kind of like, what are the questions that still plague your mind, but how are you moving forward?
Yeah. Well, currently, I did graduate from Northeastern, so I've been living in Boston now for, this is my 7th year here, which is crazy. But I am also hoping to go to medical school. I'm going through the application cycle now. So hopefully, as of right now, I mean, I think I definitely will want to work in pediatric oncology.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where people are like, you have to have an open mind, but like, come on. I think that's probably what I'm doing.
For you, I mean, I think you're sold.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm sold. And I do work at Dana-Farber in the GMI lab. So I've been kind of involved in clinical research from that side for the last 3 or so years, which has been so great just to like learn from such incredible mentors. And I think like also is part of why I feel confident that hopefully one day I can work in that field. I do enjoy research, so we'll see. But I mean, it's definitely less hard now than it was when I started. Like, I feel like not necessarily when I started working at Dana-Farber, but I feel like the first few times, like, I was just in hospitals after I was done with treatment, like, I would just panic. I feel like you couldn't really tell, but like, my heart would just be racing, and it's like I wanted to be there, and I knew I was there for an important reason, but like, physiologically, I was just like not okay. And I think that's like definitely, of course, improved a ton. And like, I want to go to medical school, so I figured it out. But it's definitely taken like years to kind of like distance myself from that. I don't know if it's like compartmentalization or what. And like some days are definitely harder than others. But ultimately, I think that like I do really like the intellectual side of it. And I do really like connecting with patients. And I think that it's like so important. So that kind of outweighs the moments where I'm like, this is really triggering to me. Yeah. But I think that'll probably be like a balancing act forever.
It did. I mean, it is. You know, the body does keep the score, whether we like it or not. Yeah. The body keeps the score. But can we reset the scoreboard real quick?
Yeah.
No, but it's so hard, you know, like whenever I get off, you know, on the exit, you know, towards the hospital, you know, it's the same kind of boulevards, Wilshire, that connects both hospitals, you know, the main UCLA campus and then UCLA Santa Monica, where I did most of my treatment. And so, you know, you go east for one, west for the other. But obviously it's a huge street in LA. You know, it connects most of the West Side. So I use that exit a lot. And still to this day, I get nauseated every time I exit. And I haven't been on chemo in over a year. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's still just kind of, you know, your body just has that physiological response of, oh, something really traumatic happens every time.
Yeah.
Even if it's not every time, it's just you have to rewire.
No, totally. I completely relate to that.
Yeah, major props to you for taking power back and, you know, working with osteosarcoma specific research. Like that is like, what a comeback story, you know? So
Seriously.
I look up to you.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. I think I definitely love it. I think there are a lot of times where I'm like, I'm not smart enough for this, but I feel like everyone feels that way.
Whenever imposter syndrome comes on.
Yeah.
I feel like especially like women going into medical fields, like women going into STEM fields in general, it's so common to have imposter syndrome, even though it's like you obviously went to a really high ranked university and you're very well educated and you've been, you know, Pitbull, believe me, been there, done that, you know, like you've gone, but it's still that like, oh, but am I good enough to make the cut? And it's like, yes, like you just have to remind yourself, you are so totally doing your best. You are kicking butt. Cancer is a bitch. You are a batter bitch. And you know, I just think that that's, you know, kind of one of the phrases that's gotten me through. And you're really kicking butt. Like, make sure you see yourself. You know, make sure you're like, okay, I got this. You know, because you totally do.
I know. I'm not great at that, but I'll try.
Well, thank you, Maeve, so much for joining us today and sharing your story. I am sure that the audience will be so inspired and motivated by your story. So thank you so much again.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's also just so nice to see both of you and chat a little bit. I
absolutely
think you're both so funny and so amazing. And I would have definitely wanted this when I was in treatment.
Oh, that's good to hear.
That really means a lot.
So awesome that you guys host all of these great episodes. I mean it. I do.
We have a lot of fun with it. We're really lucky that we have such a great rapport. And, you know, even though it's like, we still have not met in person, which is so...
I know.
Oh my God.
It's so weird, but we're like besties and we text all the time. So, you know, it's just so nice having that camaraderie. And I know that, you know, you're former president of the junior advisory board, you know, you were president my first year. I still remember you interviewing me. And I was so nervous because I
didn't know
anything about Ellen yet. And, you know, then I got on the board and I was like, this girl's so cool. And so it's, you've had such you've had such an impact on MIB, and I just hope that you know that, and I hope that you know how appreciated it is.
Thank you. I'll just say thank you. I'm working on just accepting.
Not easy. It's not.
But
easy.
I honestly, you guys are so funny, and I have fun listening. So thank you for doing it.
Well, we will continue trying our best to be the comedic relief in the horrors of life. So
horrors of life. All right.
Literally.
Sloan, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so happy to have you on. So obviously we did our episode of Osteo together and we had so much fun. So I'm really glad that you're here today. Again, this is our, you know, survivorship episode. And so, you know, we just wanted to ask you some questions. But, you know, let's just start, you know, at the very beginning, a very great place to start. So can you share the story of your diagnosis and treatment for those who don't know?
Yeah. So I started having leg problems when I was around 7. I was a very avid baseball player and I started to really not be able to run. And so we went to the doctor. They were like, we can't see anything. You should be fine. Maybe it's just growing pains, whatever. So I started wearing like braces on my right leg and all of that. My parents just thought I was like a hypochondriac. But it kept going for a long time, like multiple years, and we kept going back. And eventually I started having pain in my left ankle. And I was diagnosed with Sever's disease, which is a growth plate disorder, commonly in like taller kids, a lot of which play sports. So, you know, obviously that would be the conventional diagnosis, but they didn't really seem to want to look further. And I can't remember exactly how old I was, but it was somewhere between 7 and 12. And then just before I turned 12, my leg was getting really painful, but I didn't quite know how to communicate that.
Yeah.
And then I fell in PE in like fall, and I landed directly on my right knee. And I was like, what is this? I cannot walk. This is really painful. And so my parents, again, took me to they took me to the chiropractor first to get like acupuncture to see if it was something muscular, because, you know, sports injury, you know, and also I've seen so many doctors and they did not care. And so I did some acupuncture and all of that kind of stuff, and it became very apparent to him that it was not muscular and there was something very, very wrong. So he sent me for an x-ray of my knee, and there was just like this tiny sliver of like gray something on the very top of it. And so he was like, I need to get you scheduled for an MRI, but that takes like 4 weeks. And so I actually went on a skiing trip in Canada, in the Rockies, the very top of the mountain. I was doing like double black diamonds and all of this, jumps, tricks, whatever. And then I get home and I tell my parents I can't do PE because I tried to run and I couldn't. And they were like, yeah, right, not even possible. I was like, no, kind of possible. And so the MRI was scheduled for that week. And so they were like, you can sit out for now. And then I got the MRI. They said it would take 1 hour. It took 5. And they did not get the full tumor. But then they were like, yeah, so this is a tumor, unknown. And I went to see my first surgeon early December, and he was like, it's probably osteo, it could be Ewing's, but it's one of the two. And that was really scary for me because my best friend was diagnosed with neuroblastoma a year prior to me. And so I knew what the process was like, and I was like, no, thank you. But, you know, you got no choice. I was officially diagnosed on December 23rd of 2016. Super fun day.
Christmas.
Yep. My first chemo was New Year's Eve. And what was funny is my best friend, that was her last day of frontline, and it was my first day of frontline, and we were in rooms across the hall wearing matching hats, and we were just like going to each other's rooms.
You guys were together.
I know, it was really fun, but also really depressing.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I did full MAP, and I had very few complications from MAP initially. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of bad reactions. The most problematic thing for me was the surgery. I went back to the surgeon that diagnosed me, and he only let me see him 2 weeks before our scheduled surgery date. And he told me that I was not allowed to get my leg amputated because I wanted rotationplasty. And he said in no way, shape, or form would he do that. And I was only getting limb salvage. And if I didn't like that, he had a list of referrals he could send me and that I could go to for second opinions. And so I took that, and we went to see one, and they didn't want to disagree with him. They wouldn't take me off of his schedule, refused to do any type of surgery, and also told me that they were also taking my knee because he just didn't think to mention it. And so I ended up having the surgery with the first guy because my parents thought I was dying and we didn't have a whole lot of other choices. And I had limb salvage. And then I finished up chemo. I started 7th grade, and I was like, walking really hurts. But nobody would do anything about it. And then 6 years of walking really, really hurts later, and I'm now an above the amputee, and in so much less pain and having so much fun in college.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Comeback story for sure. So no recurrences, no nothing since
No
then.
recurrences. I think I'm 6 years out as of August. And yeah, just kind of monitoring all the side effects that could happen. But so far, there's been pretty minimal, besides like hearing loss and that kind of stuff.
So you mentioned you're in college now. So where would you say you're at now, compared to where you were then? What are you up to these days?
Since I was a baseball player, I can no longer play baseball because I had limb salvage and I couldn't run. So I kind of stuck myself into music. I went to an arts high school for jazz voice and classical violin, and that translated to me going to college as a jazz voice performance major. And I'm at University of North Texas and having a really good time and learning a lot of really cool things. And I think really growing as a performer, and I think that's like the main reason why I wanted to come here, and it is really exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. We're so excited for you.
And I'm the similar way. I didn't play baseball, but I was active in Irish dance, and I also have leaned in to music. I'm not a voice major, but definitely enjoy theater. So I guess that's a common string between us Osteo warriors. But yeah, it's great to hear you're enjoying college and living life as you should be.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
I'm so glad. It's so great, to hear your story as well, because you did have a limb salvage and an amputation. So in terms of storytelling, you kind of you know both sides of the coin. So it's
That
really
was
great.
that was one of the things that I like really like about coming on here and other platforms is like sharing that limb salvage can be great. It can be, but it's not the only option.
Yeah.
And I think like showcasing that if you're in that much pain, you shouldn't have to do that, because that's what a lot of surgeons push, and I don't think that's correct.
Especially with all the technological advancements. I mean, obviously we are not professionals in any way, shape, or form, but there is power behind our words, because we are the people receiving care. We are the patients. We are the champions. No, we the amount of battle terminology used. We are the champions. Apparently, doesn't feel like it though. But obviously, your voice especially has so much power too. And what would you say to your younger self? Because I feel like she would be proud.
Yeah, I feel like I would say don't take things as seriously. Like, obviously, life-threatening things need to be taken seriously in some respect, but that doesn't mean you have to think of life entirely as a serious situation. Like, find light in the fun things and do the things you love instead of like packing yourself into a corner. Because that's what I did when I got out of treatment. I was very depressed. I like did not know what to do with myself because my friends were all like, life is great, I have no problems. And I was like, I have so many problems.
Right. Yep.
I think learning that other people have different problems and that you can relate with other people while still like experiencing differences is something that took me a really long time to understand. But once I did, I have so many like really good relationships because I understand that while our problems are not the same, they correlate.
Mm-hmm.
Totally get that. And what would you tell a newly diagnosed patient that, is scared and doesn't know what's coming?
I would say talk. What?
And that can be the age that you were diagnosed. That could be someone who's a little bit older, just a newly diagnosed patient, whatever you want to say.
I feel like talking to as many people as you can. I know, like, especially in the newness of the situation, it becomes really scary to reach out to people or talk to people about it. But I think as soon as my mom went to the first MIB conference and got connected and like I started talking to people, it was so much easier to deal with because I knew more about what was going on. And it didn't seem like, obviously it's very daunting, but it didn't seem like I was the only one who has ever gone through this, and that my problems were just mine, and that there was no one that could help me through it. Because I feel like if you isolate yourself with just like, especially with your parents at a young age, they're going through the exact same moments as you, and it's hard for them to like reassure you in all the ways that can be, because they're also really, really scared.
Yeah.
And once I started talking to other people, I realized that I could get support outside of my family, and it was a different kind of support. And if you add all of your support systems, it's a lot easier to manage.
For sure. Yeah, MIB really, I mean, is such a healing power.
It is.
Connecting OsteoWarriors, especially the ambassador agents program. I've personally never taken part, but having someone that's been through it and is there for the sole purpose of connecting and sharing their experience and making you feel less alone, would definitely recommend MIB to anyone out there struggling, wanting to know you're not alone in this. Yeah.
There's no guidebook for parents. There's no, I mean, obviously we have, MIB's handbook, shameless plug for our incredible resource, but which you can find on our website. But there is no guidebook. And so at the end of the day, it's all kind of word of mouth or word of, I guess, blog maybe. But it's just hearing stories like yours, because no stories are going to be identical, even if you are on the exact same treatment, because we all have different lives, we all have different bodies, genetic makeups, etc. You know what I mean? So I'm so glad that you have been able to find such great support systems, and that Camille and I have as well, and that we're all connected in this MIB universe, the cancer
multiverse.
The MIB multiverse. So yeah, it's just keep sharing your story. It's such a great one. We're thrilled to have you on here as always. And yeah, Camille.
Yeah, just thank you so much for coming on again. You're a true osteo veteran and hero at this point, icon. So thanks so much.
Sloan is living.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. Eva, welcome to Osteo. We're so excited to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So to start us off, can you share a little bit about the lead up to your diagnosis, when you got diagnosed, and a little bit about your treatment?
Yeah. Well, my story is a bit weird because I'm from Mexico City, and this was in 2014, and I was in 7th grade, or about to enter 7th grade. I was a very active kid, so I was taking like dance lessons and tennis lessons. And April of 2014, I started getting this a lot of pain in my left hip. It's also a unique story because my mom actually had a melanoma a year before I was diagnosed. So she had just finished her treatment for melanoma. So we had just gone through another cancer thing. So when I started feeling sick, I mean, of course, nobody thought it was something as serious as cancer again. My mom had just gone through it and there wasn't any genetic predispositions. Right. So my pain kind of just got ignored in the sense that I went to like a general like bone doctor in Mexico, and my x-ray was clear enough that you could see there was a tumor if you were a good doctor, but kind of a hard case. Like you would have to like really look into it, so he couldn't really see anything. So April, I was told it was fine and probably just a sprain. I kept on doing my things. The pain really didn't go away, but I just kind of learned how to ignore it because I really didn't, I got, my doctor said it was fine. My mom said it was fine. And I've always been a hypochondriac. So I've always really been freaking out about my health. So I was just like, it's fine. It's nothing. Fast forward to August of 2014. I had just come back from summer break. I had been traveling with my parents and I had been walking a lot, and the pain was just unbearable. I could barely sit anymore. I was starting to have low-grade fevers. Like, it was bad. So I went to the doctor again. And obviously this time he was like, fine, like, we'll do an MRI. And when I was getting this MRI done, he was like, oh, there's a huge mass. Let's like talk to someone else. And we actually sent my scans just to my mom's oncologist because it was kind of like fast. We wanted a second opinion.
Yeah.
And my mom's oncologist saw it and was like, this is bad. You guys should go to the States or somewhere that's more prepared for this. Looks like osteosarcoma. And obviously I had no idea what that was. Nobody really knew what that was. I mean, I kind of knew it was bone cancer, but you know, it's kind of a specific bone cancer. So, yeah, as soon as we got that news, the next day we moved to Houston from Mexico so I could start a more specialized treatment. But yeah, that's kind of the backstory. And then you asked about my treatment or something in particular. What would you want me to say, Camille?
Just about what like chemotherapy was like, what surgery you got, stuff like
Well, I kind of did just a normal regimen. So I had metastasis. I was stage 4. So my primary tumor was in my left pelvis, my left iliac. But I had metastasis in my sacrum, in my L5, which is a vertebra in your spine, and then in my lungs. I had a couple of tumors in both lungs. So my doctor, my primary oncologist first, you know, we did the kind of MAP treatment. Don't really remember particulars right now, but we did a couple of months to shrink the tumor and try to get the necrosis levels up, which are dead cells. If you have cancer, you probably necrosis by now.
Yeah.
So we did that for a couple of months. My treatment started August, and then November 3rd, which this year was 9 years ago, but November 3rd, I had an internal hemipelvectomy where I got my left iliac bone and like the majority of my pelvis resected. And there were a couple of different options. I went to a couple of doctors. This is a very scary time because there's a lot of opinions and there's not really a right choice. It's just up to what you and your family feel comfortable with and the opportunities you have. Because, you know, a lot of my doctors recommended the common route, which is amputation. A lot of sarcoma patients, as I don't know about you guys, but I have amputations. But my priority at the time as like a 12-year-old was that I was really set on keeping my leg. So that was my priority at the time. So we went with the surgeon that offered this internal hemipelvectomy, which is way more challenging than just like an amputation.
Yeah.
A lot more mechanisms and like a longer like healing time, but it ended up working out for me. The biggest thing was relearning how to walk, which I could get into that later. But yeah, I had my internal hemipelvectomy in November. I kept having chemo like a month after surgery. Like I waited a month and then I started chemo again. Then I had a double thoracotomy to remove my lung tumors February. So like a couple of months after my first big surgery. And then I kept having chemo, did the regimen. Then I had cryoablation, which is another type of surgery where instead of actually cutting open and stuff, they inject, if I'm not wrong, liquid nitrogen and like freeze it where
I have them done.
Yeah. So I had that one. That was like my last big procedure, and kept doing chemo until June of 2015. So it was almost a year of chemo and 2 major surgeries and a couple of minor surgeries for like the port, the cryoablation and stuff like that. Yeah. But yes, it's definitely a doozy. For sure.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Osteo is always a lot.
It is always a lot, but honestly, I feel like all of us who deal with it then start comparing with other cancers. And I'm like, while I was going through all of this, I was like, well, at least it's not blood. And it's like 4 years, which is kind of crazy. How a lot of these treatments are just long-term or like life, a lot of people just take chemo pills for years. So at the same time, it is a lot, but I am really grateful that it was that amount of time and not more.
Yeah. Osteo can be really nasty. I've had thoracotomies. I've had multiple cryogenic and radiofrequency ablations, and it's no walk in the park. It's
really isn't.
Yeah.
Lucky for me, my treatment I responded really well to treatment, and my tumors were like in good margin and state. So my problem with osteo has been more post-treatment, because the bigger part or the biggest consequence it had in my life was that I had to relearn how to walk. And now, it's almost been 10 years from the surgery and I still like walk around with a cane and stuff. So that's even bigger than like chemo and like momentarily like treatment stuff. I'd say that's the one that had like a bigger impact on my life.
Yeah. I don't think I can name like one osteosarcoma patient that has had 100% walk in the park successful limb salvage without pain, without needing crutches or a cane or something like that. Like it doesn't end when treatment ends. It continues even when your hair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a, like it's really important to do a lot of like extreme physical therapy like the first few years after it, because those are like the most important ones. So that was definitely my biggest impact of it during my adolescence, was that I basically spent all of my time in PT, relearning how to walk and, how to move my leg and stuff. And now that I'm farther away from it, it's still something I struggle with, but I decided to kind of put it in the back seat in my life because I didn't want to let it keep being a huge problem the rest of my life. So of course it's still a problem and I still deal with it, but I'm trying to kind of not only think about that and just kind of move on from it and not like spend the rest of my life like hours in PT. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Relearning how to walk was one of the most difficult, painful things.
Yeah, it definitely puts a lot of things into perspective, because I feel like this disease just like puts you in a place where you're like, even your most basic identities or your most basic skills that you're just kind of almost born with. I mean, you're not born knowing how to walk, but we all learn how to walk when we're super young. And it's very humbling, and just it's really sad to see that like other people don't even like think about like taking a step and like just walking to get coffee in a corner or something. And for me and all of us, it's just something that's we've had to work so hard to get to the basis point again. It's a bit insane seeing how it kind of flips your life completely, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you break down the word like disability, like this cancer is disabling, like it takes away your ability to go out and do the basics, or will, decrease your ability to do the basics. And it's kind of, relearning that new normal, relearning how to walk. And to other people, especially our age, especially when you were so young, and, Camille is so young, at your age of diagnosis, and when you're, going through treatment, it's people don't expect, young adults and kids to be the ones who are like, oh, I can't, oh, we have to walk 1.5 miles. That's going to be, I have to plan ahead for that. I have to make sure I have the right footwear. I have to make sure, I have a walking aid, whatever it is. It's like it's like everything you have to think about 10 times more than the average person.
Exactly. And it's really hard because I don't want to like, I don't want it to define who I am, and I don't want people to think I'm less prepared or less able, which I mean, I am at certain points, but my main point all these years has tried to make it as much so it doesn't really impede me from doing things.
Yeah.
So even though, yeah, I get tired and yeah, it's a bit like of a longer walk for me, or like I get more tired, I've built a community around me where I have friends that understand and respect me and don't see me as differently able than them. They just, give me more of a chance to like take it slower. But the most important thing for me is just to feel more normal and feel like I still fit in, even though, I have this cane and everything. I still want everyone to see me the same way they just see another 21-year-old, which has been really hard. And as you said, since it was, I don't know about you guys, but I was like really young, and it's kind of defined my young adult years and my development during my adolescence. So it's been a big marker of my life, and I'm trying to move on and try to see what other things can define me other than just the fact that I struggle with walking.
Right. That's awesome. So where would you say you are now? Like how many years NED are you? I know that you said it was 9 years, November.
Yeah. So
like, are you in school? What do you got going on right now?
Yeah, so around July of 2015 is when I was no evidence of disease. So I think it's been close to like 8 years now, if I'm not wrong. Not really good at mental math. But right now I go and have a general checkup once a year. The first 5 years were, really intense because it's when you're more likely to go into relapse, or I don't know. I don't really know the right phrase for it right now at the top of my head. So the first 5 years, it was constant going every 3 months and getting like a full body scan. And it kind of like was really impeding me having a normal life. Then the 5 years went by, and then it became every 6 months, which was still a lot because every 6 months, I'd have to halt my life and go to the hospital and do all of this thing again. But now, thankfully, I've been able to do only once a year, a couple of years now. So it really doesn't impede my life or make me freak out. I mean, I kind of just freak out when the time's coming, but I've kind of learned to deal with it. And right now, I am a senior in college. I study biology. I have 2 quarters left, and I'm not really sure. When I first got sick and was exposed to all of this, I was really into medicine and research because I've always really liked biology. But at that time, I became really passionate about like cancer bio and cancer research. And I did that for a couple of years, but I realized I'm not the biggest fan of chemistry. And so I've kind of steered away from that part of research. And now I'm moving more and doing more. I work a lot with fish and evolution. And hopefully I'll apply to grad school maybe, or get a job soon next year. I don't really know what the next step is, but it's really exciting and scary that for the first time I can really take a normal decision at the age I'm supposed to take it, and not having to do an extreme decision when I'm 12 that not even like a 60-year-old can handle,
Yeah, it's very odd, when you finally have the power to make those decisions, and you're like,
it feels almost wrong. I'm like, I feel right. I'm like, I can't believe I'm like crying right now. I'm worried about a test when like 7 years ago I was worried about dying or losing my leg or whatever. It's very hard, as I'm sure as you guys can know, to like allow yourself to worry about less important things. Feel like I felt guilty a lot of the time that I was like worrying about things that are superficial compared to, just such life-altering decisions that you have to make when you're in treatment or right after treatment. So that's been the biggest challenge, trying to just realize that my life is not in constant danger and that I should try to leave live a more normal life, I guess.
That's really great.
Yeah. And so what do you think you would tell your younger self, or what would you tell a newly diagnosed osteosarcoma patient?
I feel like for my younger self, I'd tell them to not worry too much about living up to the expectations I set up to myself. Feel like when I got sick, I personally kind of took it as a sign that if I made it and survived, that means that I have to do something huge. And that means I have to kind of, like, a lot of the part of why I wanted to do cancer research was because I felt like I owed it to the world. And I owed it to give back to, like, the community that saved me, and I wanted to be a part of it. And I lived in constant guilt that if I'm not doing something huge or, like, massively important, I'm, like, not making the most out of this, like, second life. Yeah. So that was something I struggled a lot, like, while I was in high school and middle school. I just, like, I always was upset I wasn't doing something huge or changing the world or making a new liver out of paper. I don't know. So I tell my younger self to definitely just take it slow and not worry that much about what's there to come. And it's something I still forget now. So it's something I have to remind myself a lot. And for a newly diagnosed osteosarcoma patient, I mean, I'd say that it's not going to be easy, but I feel like more than focusing a lot of, like, on, like, specifics, I feel like when I was newly diagnosed, I had the urge to, like, check remission rates and check, like, how good this chemo is going to react, and, like, papers. And I'm a very, like, scientific person. Like, I like to see numbers. I was really scared that the chances of treatment working were so low, you know? And so I'd say that put that aside. I know it's really, really hard, but feel like if you just, what I did when I got diagnosed, it's kind of like put a mask on and, like, kind of be like, you know what? I can worry about this later. Right now, I just have to focus on one thing, getting through the day, getting through the week, getting through the month. It's very important to take it day by day. I feel like a lot of the times treatment is so overwhelming and so scary that you feel like you have to make all these big decisions now that your life depend on it. It feels like, I mean, it kind of, your life does depend on it, but sometimes I feel like we as patients kind of give it more power than it deserves at the moment. I don't really know if that makes much sense, but I just say that it's, I mean, of course, just be ready to put a brave face for a while and to pull through and not really think about, you have to just stay on, like, focus mode, and then kind of, it's going to be hell, but it's going to be worth it. And honestly, life as someone who's disabled, or I wouldn't even call myself disabled. I'd say that I just have a different body than a lot of other people. It doesn't really impede me that much until I say what impedes me or not. But, you know, I'd say that my biggest advice for a newly diagnosed person is to just literally just keep on track of your just day to day, and it's gonna get better. Like, it feels really hard when it's happening to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Often there's no light at the end of the tunnel when you're sick. Often it feels like everything's doomed and everything's bad. But I feel like when that starts to happen, you have to remember that you have to, like, just focus on the now, on what you're doing that, and then you worry about the what ifs later. Because if you just give a lot of the attention to the what ifs when you're newly diagnosed, it's going to be really scary and really overwhelming. So, you know, my biggest advice is just to pull through, and it's going to be worth it. And, you know, it's better to live your life with, like, half a hip and maybe, like, a limp that people can notice, and, like, not live it at all. So I just say that it's, you know, just time to actually, it's, like, probably the biggest thing you're going to have to face. You know, a lot of people when they're 60 or 70, they face something we face when we're so young. It's, it's bad luck that you got it. It's definitely not cool or anything, but sometimes you just gotta put on a brave face and not think about it that much. I don't have any better advice than that, unfortunately.
It's the worst lottery system ever. Is essentially
It really is. I feel like sometimes I tell my friends and like people that know me that I think I'm like the luckiest person.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so unlucky that this happened to all of us, It's so like, what are the chances? But at the same time, we're so lucky that not only we'd like made it through, but like we have this new perspective and this newfound like freedom almost, that you're like, wow, that's the hardest thing that's gonna happen. Now I just gonna try to live a normal life to the best I can.
It's what's always helped me is to remind myself, it's like I still have the basics. I still have, my mom and my friends and my girlfriend and a great, support system. I have a roof over my head. I have clean water, access to food, access to healthcare.
Definitely.
At the end of the day, that's so much more than a lot of other people have. And so it's like, yes, this is awful. I'm struggling. But at the end of the day, I appreciate it.
To forget. It really is to forget. But exactly, I have a very similar kind of thing I remind myself is that as you probably both did, I spent like 200 nights in the hospital or something like that. And every night I was in the hospital, I was like, one day I'm gonna be able to pick where I spend the night, and it's gonna be my own bed or someone else's bed, but I'll make the choice and I'll decide where I'm gonna close my eyes and fall asleep, and I'm not gonna be forced to be in a room or anything. And now it's something when I'm really overwhelmed or really struggling, I just slow down a bit and I'm like, at least I'm laying on my own bed. At least I can pick where I'm gonna sleep tonight. And even if it feels like the world is ending, that's the one simple thing that I'm like, I know I've made it because I can finally pick where I'm going to go to sleep.
That's a really, really great outlook.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard finding those things that kind of keep you going. It's hard losing its like track because, I remember I had one of my favorite nurses in my hospital. Her name was Angel. And I remember crying to her one day because I was going to get a blood transfusion, and I don't know, the whole thing with blood transfusions, your platelets, sometimes, I don't know. Like, I don't remember right now the particulars, but I think I needed one, but I couldn't get one. So I was really sad. And I was telling Angel that I was like super worried. And she told me that one day I'm going to be crying about boys, and I'm going to be crying about school, and I'm going to be crying about other things. And I'll feel the same way I felt that like at that moment about blood transfusions, but I'm going to sit back and be like, wow, at least I'm crying about boys and school and not blood transfusions. And now, even though the problems feel very real and as big as that blood transfusion felt at that moment, it's really hard. And I try to remind myself, I sit back and I'm like, wow, how lucky I am that I'm worried right now about chemistry or whatever instead of my blood transfusion. It's a constant battle to remind yourself and to take a step back and realize that whatever's happening right now is not, you've been through worse and you can do it. It's really hard sometimes to deal with normal things when you've dealt with the biggest thing.
Yeah. But OChem is no walk in the park either. Just putting that out there.
I know. But still, it felt so like such a big problem, and I was like, It is such a big problem, but at least it's, at the end of the day, I'm not worried about my blood levels or my life, and I can worry about something superficial. Even if it's not superficial, it feels superficial compared to other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Eva, thank you so much for joining us on Osteo and for sharing your comeback story. I know I feel inspired, especially having, metastatic osteo. You are living proof that there are survivors out there and that there are hope.
And it's so hard, and I'm really sorry about, just having to get constant reminders that it can come back. Thankfully it hasn't happened to me, but my best advice is just don't lose that hope, because it's just, I feel like what saves us, at the end of the day.
Exactly. Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks for coming over.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it was lovely to get to know you guys, and I hope that this message helps anyone out there.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to OsteoWarriors. We appreciate it as always. It has been an absolute honor and pleasure to interview Maeve, Sloane, and Eva. Their stories are incredible. We're so happy that we could share them with you today. And as always,
till next time, that's the tea. Bye, guys.
Bye.